My intention here is try to get you with the tools to cook 3 of the main grains that I use frequently. Now, we're going to start with chia seeds. I don't know if anybody had seen chia seeds before. Are these little grains, about 1 millimeter. I would warn you that when you soak them or wet them, they can be used as super glue. So this is how they look originally. They have not much of a flavor. They are very rich in protein, very rich in fatty acids that are good fat for us. And they also have a small amount of starches that are good starches. And we're going to talk about that later because not all carbohydrates are the same. And this is the commonality in grains. And we're going to review the anatomy of the grains in a few minutes. When you mix these chia seeds with liquids, they essentially take the fluid in, hydrate, and plump up. So we're going to remove the skin. And this is something that actually I very frequently bring to my office for a mid-morning snack or mid-afternoon snack. Okay, so this is kiwi. All right? And what we're going to do is the following. I went to a supermarket the other day. I buy some things in bulk, and I found that a box of kiwis were $4. So we're like 12 kiwis for $4. And this is what I try to do. I try to find the fruit of the season or whatever is inexpensive, and that's what I use. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is a chia pudding. Has anybody had chia pudding before? Okay. All right. So one person. So good. Because we're going to surprise a lot of people. So the kiwi here. And what we're going to do is, once we're done, essentially I just peel them off. And so I bought kiwis. I peeled them off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little bit of juice with this. What I find is that when you use a little of milk with chia seeds, they love the milk. And they get the fluid inside. They puffed up. And essentially you can create a pudding or gelatin, a mousse, depending on how much fluid how much liquid you put in it. They are going to be more or less thick. So this is very simple, and I made some of them for people who would like to taste. Now, thank you. So what I do with this, put a little of milk. I will say 1/4 cup. And we're going to be doing this in a way that we do it by eye a lot. Cooking is simple, okay? So I don't put more sugar. I think they are sweet enough, but if you want, you can put more sugar. I think that the amount of sugar here is enough. And so we're going to pulse it. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to move these here for a second. These recipes are for you, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. I need a bowl or a recipient, small bowl or recipient. I don't know if you can see. Looks like a pea soup or puree, a little bit thick. Thank you. So what we're going to do is put this puree here. You know, for kiwis, I did it a little bit thick. That's the way I like it. Like the song. So once this is a little bit thick, what I'll do, usually the way I do it is about 3 tablespoons for about 3/4 of a cup of fluid or juice. But you're going to be looking at that. We're going to put a little bit of chia seeds here. That looks like about 3 tablespoons. And then, perfect, thank you. We're going to just mix this a little bit. I usually put it in the refrigerator overnight, and the next morning I have a nice pudding. I use one of those mason jars, or many of them in different flavors. I cook them on the weekend, or I prepare them on the weekend, and I have this for the entire week because at work I don't have the time to come back and cook and get things ready. So the day that I need to work, I bring it and I take it in mid-afternoon, mid-morning, or at lunchtime, depending on how I feel, because it's a good protein source. is a good source of energy, completely lean. And the great thing about all these grains is that they have very significant amount of fiber. So it will make you feel full for a very good period of time. So that's one of the great things. Curbs the appetite entirely. Patients feel full, and the fiber is good also for constipation or that type of thing. I love to do it with carrots. Carrots and beets are great. Are a very good source of vitamin A and vitamin B respectively. So with carrots, what I do is actually I have a juicer, one of those juice extractors. I put the carrots, get the juice extracted. It's pure carrot juice. When I use just the carrot juice, it's very liquidy. So I always add a little bit of milk and then do the chia seeds. They come delicious. One of my favorites, mango. I love mangoes. So I get mangoes, those that are very meaty, cut the meat, blend it in the same way, a little of milk, and do the chia seeds. One of the things that I like a lot is matcha tea. I don't know if anybody have heard about matcha tea. Matcha tea is very strong. It's a great antioxidant, and is the equivalent of coffee without the raise and bottom in terms of energy. So using milk with a little of matcha that has also a very earthy flavor, and with the chia seeds comes delicious. I go to my local market, get the cheapest fruit from the season, and I use it raw. All the vegetables and all the fruits are very nutritious raw, with one exception, tomatoes. Tomatoes have lycopene, and lycopene gets better release when you heat them. So there's nothing wrong about eating a raw, fresh tomato. It's delicious, but the value of a cooked tomato also is very high, because the lycopenes and all the antioxidants get released. Some people in Spain, we eat a soup that is essentially peppers with tomatoes and garlic with olive oil that you essentially blend and make a cold soup from that. Now, some people would say, I will never eat something like that, but it's a matter of developing the taste. Beets. Beets are very sweet, are great fruit, and I combine them with carrots. So any raw fruit, you can make these with the chia seeds, and that's a very good way to create something different. Because when you go into the internet, you're going to find that you can add it to salads. That's the other thing I do quite frequently. When I make a salad, I sprinkle chia seeds on top of the salad and let them sit with the dressing for a few minutes. And when I say a dressing, never buy a dressing, okay? Make it yourself. Buy a good oil, and whether you like canola oil, whether you like corn oil, whether you like extra virgin olive oil, highly recommended. Those are oils that are going to improve your HDL, and they're going to improve your overall lipid profile. And mix them with sesame oil. We're going to be using sesame oil today. And mix them with whatever acid you want. Lime juice, lemon juice, sherry vinegar, white vinegar, white wine vinegar, red wine vinegar, whatever vinegar you like, balsamic vinegar, and alternate. And you're going to find that the flavors change dramatically, and you're going to be eating good. So I usually do my salads, cut all what I'm going to eat. I put fruits in my salads too, and then prepare the dressing and sprinkle over. Mix it very nicely and gently. You have to be careful with your vegetables, caress them, mix them gently, and then when you're done, you sprinkle some chia seeds on the top, let them rest for 5 minutes, and you're going to see how good they taste. And the important thing, and this is the value, they will make you feel full for a longer period of time, and your appetite will be curbed. For whoever has seen some of my advice, I don't tell patients, okay, I want you to go to the gym and run, and you are going to cut down this, and I want you to lose 10 pounds in 2 months for the time I see you. That doesn't work. The opposite works, and we're going to see some of the data. If you modified what you eat, controlling portions a little bit and changing the source of what you eat for your calories, patients will lose weight. There's no question about it. And my success with patients who have lose weight is essentially telling them, modify your diet and just walk every day or every other day and modify your diet, And that's a lifestyle that is promoting to lose weight, because the other way, if the one who gets to lose weight aggressively, he will gain it back. And the other proportion of people don't lose the weight, because essentially unless you modify your habits, the habits are going to come back, and there's not going to be a permanent solution for weight control besides all the nutritional richness that this type of thing provides. A lot depends on where you get them from. Okay, so when you cook grains and most of legumes, which are the complement to grains, I recommend that you select them, wash them, and then use them. With chia seeds, they are so tiny, they're so well selected that you don't need to. You just sprinkle them up. Don't worry about that. If you try to rinse them and then put them, it's going to be a total mess. So they are perfectly fine. I'm going to do something like this. My hands are clean, so it's like a sprinkling salad. A little salt or pepper in your salad, just sprinkle that. You hear that? It's like a little nice rain. What we're going to do next is quinoa. People here appear to be familiar with quinoa. I grew up in Peru. My family's from Spain. I grew up in Peru. The Incas grew up with some basic sources of food. One was corn. Corn is a great source of amino acids. Lacks of one thing, tryptophan. It's a very good amino acid that lacks there, but exists in other vegetables. And the second one is quinoa. Quinoa is similar in appearance to chia seeds. The difference is the only grain that has a complete source of amino acids. All the other grains are missing one or two of the amino acids. And the interesting part from that is that the amino acids that grains are missing are present in legumes. Okay? Now that becomes beautiful, because when we mix them, essentially we are not only increasing the nutritional value, but I also think that we are increasing the flavor of whatever we are cooking. And that's one of the things that we're going to do today. We're going to do a fiesta quinoa. So we're going to do quinoa. We're going to mix it with some black beans, very Mexican. Second part of this is talk about quinoa and how to cook quinoa. Quinoa is extremely versatile. I want to give you the tools of 3 ingredients that, if you know how to cook them, you're going to be able to prepare 100 different dishes from that. And I want to be clear, that not promoting that you just eat quinoa or grains or anything. What I'm trying to do is to promote using grains in your diet, because the nutritional value and all the other things that we're going to see are great. And the second thing is a very good substitute for rice. White rice is one of the most processed grains. It's a grain, but it's the most processed grain in which all the nutritional value has been lost, and has a very high glycemic index. Has the starches that once we eat them, it's like eating sugar. The blood sugar goes tremendously fast, high, and then drops very fast. So the difference with these grains is that essentially the release of starches is much slower, and you can substitute these for potatoes, for mashed potatoes, for rice, and from other sources of side dishes that are very rich in calories. When we cook quinoa, is the following. The following is quite a standard for most of grains. What I found, thank you, I might need another one. What I found with grains and with legumes, a lot depends of where you buy it, when they were where they harvested, and where they were kept in terms of the humidity that they have. So you might find that you might need a little more or a little bit less of liquid to cook them, but it's very simple. The ratio is about 2 cups of liquid for 1 cup of quinoa. And that's pretty much common for most of the grains. Now, if you go and you buy grains, you read the container and you will find it how to cook them. So cooking quinoa takes about 15 to 20 minutes. It happens very fast, and that's the other beauty about it. Once you cook it, and you're going to see with all the grains, you can store in the refrigerator very well without degrading for the entire week. So what I do is cook my basic quinoa, and I bring it the night before I come to the hospital to work, and then essentially dress it with whatever I want and mix it with the source of protein that I want. by the way, disclosure here, we are not using any meats, no booze, right? And so nothing that is an animal source here. So this is a little bit challenging because it's going to be all vegetarian to me. However, when I use quinoa, I just like to accompany that with the protein of your choice. I like seafood a lot, I eat a lot of fish, and I eat a lot of chicken and turkey. And in that way, we are complying with essentially the American Heart Association recommendation of the food nutrition pyramid. So I have here 4 cups of water. You can use chicken stock, perfectly fine. 2 cups of chicken stock rather than water. If you like just the pure flavor of quinoa, which I think has a very nice and soft but good flavor, you can just use that. So what I do most of the time is essentially use 2 cups of chicken broth, vegetable broth, whatever broth you like, in the quinoa. Very frequently what I do is just use bouillon. So, and what I do is I found that for every 2 cups of water, I use 1 tablet of bouillon, and that's what we're doing. Let it boil. So I let it, the water dissolve, and we're going to be cooking with that a little bit slow. And then once the water is boiling, you add the quinoa. Now, somebody asked me about rinsing chia seeds. Rinse your grains, but particularly rinse quinoa. Quinoa is an interesting plant that has something called saponins. Saponins are these very bitter substances that cover the quinoa and protect them from being eaten from animals, birds, and everything else. So if you don't wash quinoa, if you don't rinse quinoa, it's going to be bitter. So we're going to take 2 cups of quinoa. All right. All right, so what I'm going to ask you is if you can rinse it a little bit underwater.
Sure.
A little rinse underwater. We're going to put it here and cook it. And in 15 to 20 minutes, we will have the quinoa cooked and ready. You will be counting 15 minutes, right?
I got it, yeah.
So simmer, cover 15 minutes, and that time we'll see how it's looking.
Okay.
All right. And so what we're going to do in the other one, we're going to take this one in a pan. Mushroom, walnuts, if you can chop them very fine, and I'll get some of this. All right, and I'm going to get a clean knife. They're thicker, that's okay. So we're going to chop some. So I have here some porcini mushrooms. Who likes mushrooms? Who dislikes mushrooms? Okay. I still will encourage you to try, okay? Because my taste is somewhat different than what you used to. Now, I think some people don't like mushrooms because of the texture. There are so many, and that's another source of protein that is essentially protein and water. They are very good source of protein, have no fat, no calories. Perfect, so that's enough. So let's get the pan and let's see what we want, a big one, and see. Olive oil is not the greatest thing to fry, okay, because the heat point is low. So it's a great oil to cook raw. You can add to food if you're cooking it and frying lightly, but if you're going to do a really serious frying, don't use olive oil because your smoke point is going to be low. It's going to be denaturalized. It's not going to be a very good thing to do. And we're going to be escalating here on things that we're doing. Okay. Okay. Some garlic. People okay with garlic too? All right. Yeah. I love garlic. I usually tend to put too much, so we'll try not to be the case. All right, so you can help me here. Yeah, and then get in some and just mince it. 2 or 3?
I always use more.
Yeah, you do too. Okay, so let's put 3 then, at least. Well, we're going to be. don't know how many people are going to be trying, but let's try to put 3 or 4 then.
Okay.
That's the fun thing. When I cook at home also, I have everybody coming around and helping, and it's in tasting, that's the thing. So let's add this. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit of peanut oil, because peanut oil is good for frying. All right. I have a friend who grows garlic, and she's usually the source of garlic, and I'm always very happy about that. Garlic is the other thing. If you use garlic, try to chop it when you're cooking. If you chop it before, the substances in garlic that gives the flavor get activated once you cut it and chop it. So if you prepare it, you cut it, and you get chopped garlic beforehand, the flavor and the taste doesn't work. So, and it's simple. I usually just smash it, and then after smashing it, just you do the same thing. So smash it and then chop it a little bit. Have not found a practical way to get garlic prepared beforehand. Just a little bit. So we could put a lot of yep.
Hold those for the end.
Hold for the end, because we're going to just toast them.
Yep.
And I think these.
You're welcome, Mr.
Yeah, that's perfect. No, that looks great. So this is a wok. I have to say this is a learning experience for me, because this is the first time that I have cooked in front of an audience and in a place that I'm not familiar with, and certainly an experience. So we're going to let them cook a little bit more, and then we're going to mix it with the quinoa, stir it, and we're going to get the next dish ready, which is barley. And then while we do this, we're going to do some Mexican food for the other part of quinoa. So this is as simple as it gets. A couple of mushrooms, just chopped, fried, a little bit of garlic. Smells good. I don't know about you, but it smells good. And as simple as that, we're going to mix it with quinoa. And perfect. Thank you. Perfect meal for nighttime. So I'm going to get a few other ones here. While that gets cooked, we're going to get some peppers and onions. And I think we have a little plant with basil there, and a big bowl. This pepper smells good. We need a smell-o-vision. Yeah, I think we're getting all the smells here. Yeah. All right. So what I'm doing here is just chopping a little bit of a red pepper. We're going to mix that with onions. That's good. That's good. And we didn't practice before, have? No. We're just being here spontaneous, and so we're going to do a Mexican type of thing with a little bit of red peppers. We're going to do an onion. What else do you like in Mexican? Black beans? Yeah, black beans. Black beans. Well, and we talked about the combination of legumes and quinoa, so we'll do that. What about corn? A little bit of sweet corn? Okay, so we'll do that. Tomatoes. We'll do tomatoes without the seeds. Mix it, and then we're going to put a little bit of quinoa. What I want you is to get the idea that I think that once you're at home, you will feel a little more relaxed, and you can try and cook. Yeah, that's okay. I will just take it and then mix it. If you mix it, and I'm going to hold it here. If you be careful with your hand, because it's really hot. The next one we're going to do is called quinoa, and we're going to mix just essentially some vegetables. So we have onions, peppers. Let's do this. Let's do the tomatoes. These are again black beans. I bought a pound of black beans yesterday for $1. Essentially what I do with the black beans, I don't pre-soak them anymore. I don't have the time. So what I do is rinse them, wash them, and put them in the pressure cooker for 2 minutes. Okay, and you remove them. You're going to find that the liquid has all these bad sugars that give the gas that beans are very well known for. And so what you do is you rinse them with cold water. Rinse them very well. You will be removing all these sugars that are responsible for gas, and they will be pre-cooked in a way that they are soft throughout. And once I've done that, I essentially get them back in the water with new cold water and boil them for 5 minutes. And in about 7 minutes, you have beans that are done, and obviously much tastier than anything that is canned. When I cook them, what I'm removing now is I put a quarter of an onion, and I put a little of 1 clove of garlic. So we have beans that have a beautiful texture and not the mushy things that you get from the cans. We're going to do this cold. So cilantro, I think we have some cilantro and basil. And we have our mix, our bases, and we'll mix this with quinoa, and now we have Mexican style quinoa. Essentially after 15 minutes you check and you sure that the water is almost all consumed, okay? And once that happens, you essentially, what I do is let it sit for another 5 minutes, uncover, and at that time the quinoa is ready. You just fluff it up a little bit, put it in a cold container, and you're going to see how good and tasty the quinoa is that way. All right, so this is fresh cilantro. I wash it just before coming, and you want to help me with this?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Cilantro, chop it. We're going to do, I like to put a little bit of basil with the cilantro. Now, one recipe that I gave you, and my son used to love it, still does, but he's in college now. And I liked a lot is you cook the quinoa. Once you have the quinoa like this, you get a couple of eggs. So you whip your eggs there and add a little bit of grated cheese and add the quinoa. Okay? And then you have these little dough type of thing. Now I get a flat, like a cookie, what do you call those things that you cook? Cookies?
Baking sheet?
Yeah, baking sheet. You get a baking sheet, spread the quinoa about 1 finger thick, and put it in the oven, high heat, for 20 minutes. You will get the most delicious pretzel-like or fingers, bread type of thing to accompany soups and all that. They are delicious. There's no bread, it's quinoa, and the only thing that you have is the quinoa and whatever amount of cheese you want to put in. That comes really nice. Okay, so we have basil. So you mix the quinoa with the eggs and the cheese. Raw egg. That's right. It's scrambled raw egg. And so you mix all that and create like a little butter. It comes thick. You spread it in the baking sheet. Cook it for 5-10 minutes because the quinoa is already cooked. So what you want is the egg to coagulate and the cheese to melt. And in the top, usually it comes really brown, really nicely cooked, and they come delicious to have with a nice soup in the winter. The lecture has a lot of the things that we have been talking already, and I'm going to go through that fast. So I'll give instructions here. For this, when I make these things, I like to use different wines. I like to put obviously lime juice in something that is Mexican, but so we have what we need to do there. Cilantro. People like cilantro a lot, or yes? So you think that would be good?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. And we can put the tomato.
Want me to chop the tomatoes?
Yeah, if we can. At the end, we're going to put a little bit of sherry vinegar. Let it sit for a few minutes. This is, I think, $1.50, and you have this for for a very long period of time. We can stop there. No, we're going to put this here. You can mix it, and lime juice, 2 lime juices, mix it, and then we're going to mix it with the quinoa, and then we should be ready. Okay, so, and we're ready to do the lecture anytime. Grains essentially are these small, hard, dry seeds, and they are essentially crops of grasses, all right? And we have 2 main types, cereals and legumes. So if you show the next one. So cereals are essentially these grasses, and if you remember wheat, you will see, and you remember that this is like a wild grass. And their fruits, also known as kernels, is that we're going to use to eat. So depending on the area on the globe, if this is a warm area or a cold area, geographically speaking, people cultivate the grains at 2 different seasons. So in warm areas, they cultivate what is called millets, fonio, job steers. I never saw them until about a month ago when I found them in a Chinese place. They're very nice, and they're almost like a mix in between a grain and a legume. Corn, we are all familiar with that, and sorghum. The cold season cereals are barley, oats, rice, spelt, teff. Teff is becoming extremely popular. It's very small. It's very good with for baking products, triticale, wheat, and wild rice. And we're going to talk about wild rice because I found something very interesting about that. It's actually not rice at all right? And the next one, we have the legumes. Okay, so the legumes are essentially the fruit of these other family called the Fabaceae. And so faba beans comes from that. And essentially they develop a single pod, and many of them are split in the middle. And we've seen that in chickpeas and peas and all the other ones, and we have that big list there. You're okay with that, and we're not going to talk about them. The only important thing that I wanted to mention is that legumes and grains make a perfect combination in terms of nutrients, and that's the nice thing about that. So we have black beans with quinoa. That's a powerful combination. The next one, please. Then we have the pseudocereals. These are essentially grains that are non-grasses, but because their nutritional value, they are pretty much placed in the same group. We're talking about quinoa today. In Peru, there's also a lot of this other one that is not well known that is called cañihua. Cañihua is also very good in terms of nutrients, and is used very frequently to mix with milks, to make milkshakes. Chia that we're using, and we have the list of other ones. Buckwheat is becoming very popular, and it's a very good nutrient, and you may have seen that there's more and more buckwheat noodles. Chinese people are bringing these buckwheat noodles that, rather than being just a starch, are made from these pseudo-cereals, and therefore the nutritional value is much higher. The important thing about this is that any one of these grains, and certainly many of these pseudo-cereals, are being transformed into flours. So you can buy flour now for almost any one of them, and substitute them for the flour that you would use normally to make any good baked things that you do, and you will have something that is more nutritional. Let's go to the next one, please. So this is a part that got me very confused. If we look at the anatomy of a grain, we're going to see that there's a germ, or the part that will germinate, and that's very rich in proteins, antioxidants, in good oils. Then we have the endosperm, which is the white part that has starches, but these are starches that are complex ones, not the sugary ones that will raise sugar very fast. Then we have the bran. The bran is this outer portion that is essentially fiber. It's a good fiber. And that's what essentially a grain is composed of, and what we eat, because all of them come within a hull, okay? And the hull is non-edible. And so any grain that we buy, probably with exception of what is called wheat berries, that if anybody has had wheat berries, they are really crunchy. I personally like them, but a lot of people don't like them because they are very crunchy. It's almost like caviar or one of those things. You bite on them and then you find the inside. But All the rest have the hull removed. Now, this is the part that is interesting in the teaching I want to do. When you go and buy grains, you're going to find processed grains. The processed grains have a very low nutritional value. And a processed grain usually has essentially the bran removed and the germ removed, and we're only left with the endosperm. So all the good nutrients are removed. So when you go and read about what you're going to buy, try to buy whole grain. When you buy bread, and I know that there's a big trend towards buying whole bread, whole grain breads now, right? A lot of people try to move from white bread into whole breads because essentially the flour, white flour, is completely denaturalized and has been processed in a way that all the nutrients have been removed and we're left just with the flour. Indeed, what happened centuries ago, not centuries ago, at the beginning of prior century, 1930s, it was felt that white flour was refined, was easy to eat. So it was essentially a sign of quality to eat white flour. And people start getting pellagra and beriberi and all these diseases because essentially they were depriving all the grains from vitamin B. So in the United States, at least, and in many parts of Europe, the federal government requires that any white flour or any grain that is not whole is enriched with vitamins in order to give the vitamins that were removed with the unnatural processes. So in the United States, you're not going to find anything that is just a pure white flour because the government requires that the vitamins and nutrients get put back. Let's go to the next one, please. So if we look at the nutritional value of the kernel, we can see the components of carbohydrates, protein, fat, and fiber. And essentially, we can see that the bran has a lot of fiber, has a good amount of fat in the endosperm in the bran. And the endosperm is the starches, while the hull and the germ is what it have the nutritional part of the grain. The next one, please. So whole grains are foods that are made, they contain the three essential parts. Have to have bran, germ, and endosperm. When they are processed, essentially the bran and the endosperm is removed. Sorry, the germ is removed and there's only endosperm. Now, you're going to find a lot of definitions when you buy your products. I was very confused at the beginning with all of this, but essentially peril grains have been partially treated, and I think that this applies only for wheat. When they remove part of the bran, that's called peril. So if you get wheat or barley, that will be okay. Whole grains are essentially all the grains, because if the grains have the hull, they are non-edible. The refined processed white grains essentially have all the nutrients removed. Enriched grains is what the U.S. government mandates. They have been enriched again, and fortified grains are the ones that had more nutrients than normal in order to try to appeal some population. Next one, please. So we talked about these wheat, and the other thing, groats and berries, are essentially the grains that are whole grains, but they have been crushed or broken into fragments in a way that they can absorb water better and can be cooked. So groat and berries are fine. Next one, please. Next one. So they are very rich in nutrients, very rich in antioxidants, decreasing coronary artery disease, Alzheimer's disease, CVAs, and they provide long-lasting energy and sensation of fullness. Next one, please. Weight control. We talked about the fact that when we eat grains, we feel full for a longer period of time, and so this is a good way to curb the appetite. A Harvard study shows that people who consume with U.S. mandate of grains tend to have longer lives. Lowers the blood pressure for obvious reasons, relieves constipation, good amounts of fiber, because it relieves constipation, decreases the amount of GI cancers, particularly colon cancer, and this is all facts. And obviously it has a very favorable profile in all the components of a lipid panel. In children, and this is the important thing, because once we are getting into essentially parents or grandparents, I think it's our obligation to teach the next generations to to be better than what we've done before. And in children, it's been proven the following. It decreases the amount of asthma significantly. It decreases the amount of acne tremendously. So that two things for teenagers are very good. And the next one, there was also a study done. The next one, please. We talked about hunger, so I'm not going to go back to that next one. Okay, I want to talk about children in 1 second. So, okay, so this is the benefit on children. We essentially review all that in terms of obesity. Children obesity is getting to a time high level. It is expected that the U.S. population by the year 2030, 50% will be obese. That's tremendous. Right now we are at 31%. So there are simple things that we can do for that. That's a good one. So essentially, eating grains and incorporating grains in the diet reduces the risk of a stroke by 37%, cancer, heart disease, and obviously not only helps with diabetes, but helps also with the control of blood sugars. The study that's interesting, and this is what I want to talk about, the easy way of losing weight with the grains. So they did this study in children aged 9 to 15 who were fed grains. They noticed that they were able to lose weight very fast and very rapidly and get all the other benefits that we have. And this is obviously, the study was done in children, but this is not anything that only happen in the youth. That happens in adults too. Next one, please. Acne, we talked about that, all these new guidelines. So the USDA dietary guidelines call for a plate that looks like that. And as you can see, a quarter of the portion of what we eat should be grains. And if we combine that with vegetables and fruits, essentially we have a very healthy source of dietary fuel. Next one, please. Now, when you go buy, where you're going to go and buy grains or cereals, you're going to find that the information might be a little bit misleading. And what I will recommend is that you try to learn how to read labels. Okay, the labels in the United States are placed essentially by weight. The highest component by weight goes on the top and then go down. We usually tend to concentrate in calories, and we said, oh, you know, this has 250 calories, the other one has 200. But calories and calories are not the same. They can come from different sources. And calories for protein and fat and hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated fat are essentially completely different. Calories from alcohol are completely different. You know, a gram of protein or a gram of carbs gives 4 calories. When we talked about proteins, when we talked about fat is 9. When we talk about alcohol, it's 7. But 1 gram of alcohol can turn into nothing other than sugar and fat, while protein and the other nutrients will turn into something else. And that turns also true for carbohydrates, because carbohydrates like sugar, they have a very high glycemic index. They will make insulin to go very fast and then drop down. You feel hungry immediately after. There is this dropping down effect from the sugar coming down. So when you read about carbohydrates, also you want to see what is the soluble fiber, what is the insoluble fiber, and what is the total source of carbohydrates. So remember, not all created equal. Second, when you go for the ingredients, always read about what is the ingredient, and you want to read that there is whole something, whole grain, whole wheat. Be careful, because the industry is very tricky, not surprised, right? So you will read that there is something that says enriched, or they say a fancy word like stone mill. Oh, it sounds really good, you know. But no, that's all processed. So those are not really good sources of grains. And we're going to look about what is good. And this happened to me until not too long ago. I went to the supermarket, I want to get a good bread, and I bought a multi-grain bread, or a 7-grain, or a 12-grain. Well, when you flip the container over and read it, all of them are enriched grains of 7 different types, okay? But they're not whole grains. So when you really want to get whole grain, whether it's a bread, a grain, or anything else, you want to see that there's a whole grain wheat, and then you will be fine. there's more and more in the United States what is these called the basic stamp of the whole grains console. And you will find these two stamps that you're going to see very frequently when I went to buy these things. You have two stamps, the whole grain, in which you have these wheat-looking things here, and the whole grain with 20 grams of serving, that is the same thing, but with 100%. The United States USDA suggests that we have at least 8 grams of serving per day. So we know that this one will provide at least 8 grams of serving, at least 8 grams of serving in the serving that they provide. If you have the 100%, that means that it's giving you the whole serving. It's usually at least 16, and many times it's 20 grams. So when you see those two stamps, you know that you're buying something that is appropriate. Next one, please. So this is just a list of things that I've seen around. So if you see whole name of the grain or whole grain, oats are always whole, by the way. There is not, it's not like not whole in terms of oats and oatmeal. Those are the things that you will be fine with. You don't want to buy anything that reads enriched flour, degerminated, bran, wheat germ. Be careful with pearl barley. Be careful with a stone ground and all these fancy words that essentially mean nothing, because you're buying the non-nutritional products. Next one, please. Next one. So as we may consume whole milk, 2%, 1%, low fat, the grains are the same way. And I certainly will emphasize the fact that we want whole grains. Next one. You have all this in your handouts. This is a great place. If you go there, you're going to find tremendous amounts of information about grains. I would have to say go and get there. There are at least 20 variety of grains with different flavors and with different nutritional values. Plus, I would have to say over 600 recipes of things that you cannot imagine, from pizza to muffins to mashed potatoes. I think this is in your handout. Next one, please. There's more and more of grain, whole grain. Sorry. Oh, you want the name? wholegrainconsole.com. They're getting handouts, right?
Recipes, but we will make sure that we put it in our newsletter.
Okay. This is a great place, by the way. You may Google, find many. This is by far, I think, the most authoritarian, best place. So the fact that we are having also flours, and you can use them more and more to bake. Next one. Okay, we talked about storing grains. So if they are uncooked, as much as you have in a bag that is airtight, you can store them for about 6 months. There are a couple of things here. One of the reasons, well, the two reasons why the industry started processing grains. One is because it looks better, it looks more refined, sorry. But the second one is because the shelf life is longer. And the reason is, if the germ is removed, that's essentially where the rich oils are, and the grains tend to be spoiled a little bit faster. So that's why grains last for about 6 months. If you cook them, if you freeze them, you can also freeze them and store it for 6 months. If you just put it in your refrigerator 1 week, and you are golden. 2 weeks, and you could be okay. I would probably recommend not to go beyond 2 weeks. But if you do a batch cooking and get a source to mix that with different things, you can put it in your refrigerator, just take it, and you will have a very fast meal. I have a patient who tell me, "Oh, doc, I work too hard. You know, I go to work at 5 a.m. in the morning. I leave at 5 in the afternoon. When I go home, I'm just tired. I threw 2 hot dogs, and then I get 2 other ones." And I say, try this, cook them on the weekend, and keep it there, and try to bring some at home. Before you start feeling hungry, eat something mid-afternoon. You will see when you go home, you're going to do fine. In about 2 months, he lost about 20 pounds, not suffering. Not really. He was really overweight and had many problems cardiac-wise. and lose 20 pounds. So next one, please. I don't know if this is in the handout or not, but this is in the same, I don't know if this is in the same place or not, might not be. But we can forward this. This is how to cook each one of the grains. But essentially remember, 2 cups of fluid for 1 cup of grain. Watching them in general, you do fine with that. Next one. This is, I taught you the classic stove oven preparation. If you want to do this in a pressure cooker, you can do it. Next one, please. If you want to do it in a rice cooker, follow the instructions for your rice cooker, okay? One thing that I love is actually I got these, they are coming with these grain cookers that you can put in the microwave. I don't know if you've seen them. They are made from silicone. The company I have, I cannot say, I think, because I will be advertising here. But essentially, you do the same thing as cooking. You put this lid that has these little fenestrations, these little holes in the top, microwave 13 minutes. And the nice thing, I mix that with seafood or any of them, let 13 minutes. When it comes back, it's like arroz con pollo, paella, seafood, pure rice, and all that comes very nice, very fast in a microwave. So check that if you're interested. Next one. Next one, please. And this one, this is next. I'm going to go very fast through this because this is just a little hint of the value of each one of the grains. I don't think we have time for that. We've been too far into this next one. Next one.
Wild rice?
Okay, wild rice, great. Is a great food, it's not rice, okay? When you eat rice, this is the 3 things I want to say. All white rice is the most processed grain and perhaps the most tolerated and most digestible grain because it's almost pure soft starch. And that's why it is one of the first foods that is given to kids. But has essentially lost a lot of nutritional value. So if you're going to do rice, try to do brown rice that is the equivalent of whole rice. There's been also a big trend towards wild rice, and wild rice is delicious, cooks different, but it's not rice. It's actually the seed of an algae that grows in the Great Lakes in the United States, and that's where it became popular. It's just a nice hint, but that's essentially what it is. Bulgur, I think a lot of people like to eat tabbouleh, and tabbouleh is a great thing to do. It's essentially cracked wheat. It's another great way to go. Corn. In the United States, corn, I think, became not very popular because it's essentially used to make a high corn fructose syrup, corn syrup, and that type of things. But it's obviously a good nutritional source. Next one. Oats are great. Somebody was asking about mixing this with other products. Oats come in 2 forms. In the United States, essentially are raw oats. So they are partially heated and then rolled and then flattened. The more flattened they are, the easier to absorb water and to eat them. And then the other ones are the English type of oats. They're steel cut oats that are essentially the grains that are cut very small to make the porridge, right? Okay, next one. Millet is becoming very common in the United States. You can find it in many places. It works like polenta. So if you like polenta, you can make these little medallions of polenta. Works very well. Next one, please. Teff is coming very popular for baking.